Welcome to my channel. Today I will show you the recap of the movie The Sleepwalker. Before we start, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you are new here. College student Sarah Foster is found by the police as she is sleepwalking in her nightgown on the road. Since the suicide of her husband Jonathon, who worked as a novelist, she is suffering from sleep disorder. A few days later, her teacher's assertion that love stories are just a dopamine rush or a sign of bipolar disease. She is enraged even more when he refers to her as Miss Wells, and a pupil repeats the term. This surname is also confirmed by Dawn, her driver's license, her diary, and a dedication in her husband's book. Cooper's assistant turns down Sarah. Dr. Koslov shows her a protocol concerning her dream in which she is pursued in the sleep lab. She denies having had any dreams, but her signature appears on the form. After one more night under surveillance, Sarah briefly mentions some kind of fear to White, but neither she nor the machines have recognized a dream during the night. In the library, she looks for books about psychology. She talks to an employee about forgetting things, and he mentions partial retrograde amnesia as a cause for this. It may be cured by returning to everyday routine. But if there are also hallucinations, it might be a psychosis. In her apartment, Sarah does not meet Dawn, but a different young woman named Nicole, who does not know Dawn, but something about Sarah's sleepwalking. As Nicole leaves, Sarah gets a phone call from an unknown, scary voice, which introduces himself as her stalker in the dark. She goes to Cooper again, but the doctor does not remember her or the talk. At home, she locks herself into her bedroom, and says to herself that she is Sarah Foster. She has again a nightmare, in which she is attacked from behind and suffocated with a plastic bag. She wakes up in an unknown house, in whose letterbox she finds a letter addressed to the current resident. In her nightgown, she goes to her apartment, in which she sees Nicole and a second woman, but she cannot get in. She spends the rest of the night in a room next to the pool of the apartment complex. At daylight, she sees the two women leaving the apartment. Then she smashes a window with a brick. In the apartment, she puts on a blouse and a skirt, which are too big for her size. The stalker calls her again on the phone and tells her that he is going to watch her and wants to feel her. Sarah grabs some pills and alcohol and locks herself into a closet next to the washing machines. Water flows in under the door. After waking up, Sarah returns to her apartment, whose window is no longer smashed. Dawn just comes out, and in reaction to her question, Sarah states having spent the night at the sleep laboratory. She looks up White's private address and drives there on her bike. On the way, she passes the unknown house, in which she woke up some time ago. White is renovating his house and welcomes her friend. He listens to Sarah's report about the irritating events, and then calls Dr. Cooper, who remembers Sarah. White tells Sarah that she has unusual sleep patterns that might affect her perception. She asks whether the world might change dramatically, and runs away. Near her apartment, she thinks that the stalker is behind her, but White is there again. He takes her to his home. She mentions that she has panicked to fall asleep, because everything could change again. White responds by explaining that chemical triggers in the brain produce emotions during dreams, which are then used by the reasoning side of the brain to build a tale. She is adamant that the unfamiliar house was real, but she does not want to offend the resident. While watching a thunderstorm, she wonders if she can be saved and why White is so kind. He responds that they will get through this together, and that everything will fall into place. Sarah decides to spend the night at his place. She is coated in plastic in her nightmare, and then sees an unknown woman in bed with whom she is rejected. In her nightgown, Sarah leaves the mysterious house of her former dream, and re-enters White's house in the dawn, without meeting him there. She puts on yesterday's clothes, which are too big for her. In her own apartment, she has a look at the window, which is now covered with cardboard. In the sleep laboratory, she asks for Dr. White, but is not recognized. A completely different man introduces himself as White. He knows a woman called Sarah Wells, but it is not the Sarah he is talking to. In the lecture hall, Sarah sees a quote which says that you do not need to know who you are, because the purpose of life is to become something different than at the beginning. In the group of students, she also sees the unknown woman and panics even more. As cops are in front of her apartment, she hides in the closet, and there is water on the floor again. Sarah wakes up in the sleep laboratory. The well-known White tells her that she has sleepwalked again, until the police brought her to his house. She cannot remember anything, but the data show that she has a dream during the whole night. She talks about her last experiences in the other world. White thinks that the stalker might be an anchor connecting the two worlds. When he asks Sarah for the reason for her husband's suicide, she says that she wrote about it in her diary, but cannot remember the event after her therapy. In front of her apartment, she reads her diary, and is not irritated by Nicole arriving at the flat. On a public computer, she looks at an old news article saying that the author Jonathon Gray was shot by a crazy fan. She shows the article to White. He says that he has all the information about her husband's death from her, and she herself learned everything about it from Dr. Cooper, she says. After returning to her apartment, she is attacked by the stalker, but she can free herself, causing the attacker to go mad. When White arrives after being alarmed by her, the flat is undamaged, and there is no trace of the attacker. Cooper joins the two and Sarah is confronted with another dream protocol. Although White tries to calm his patient, Sarah is put into a hospital and bound to the bed in spite of her resistance. At the same evening, White meets Cooper, who suddenly does not know Sarah and denies having seen White that afternoon. He drives back to the hospital to take Sarah, who is winding in her bed in spite of a strong sedation. White frees her and takes her to his house. There she again shows panic about falling asleep, and he tells her about Cooper's awkward reaction. Then he lies next to her to help her get into sleep. Sarah wakes up with her head on his breast and her hospital gown still on. She claims in the following chat that she now remembers some things. Warren Lambert, she claims, was her stalker and was enamored with Jonathon. The incident at her flat was not real, according to White, who describes it as a memory resurfacing. Sarah observed Jonathon's sexual encounter with a fan when she visited him in his office, she says. She broke up with him, but she claims a fan shot him. Sarah is ambushed by the stalker in White's dark residence, who tries to suffocate her with a plastic bag from behind. White, on the other hand, comes to her aid and knocks the aggressor down. The policeman describes the attacker as a well-known criminal and addresses Sarah as Foster. After that, Sarah and White have sex. In the night, Sarah sleepwalks again in her white nightgown. She sees the unknown woman first in the sleep laboratory, and then in the house of the dream, where she asks for her name in vain. Through the rain she walks to the lab again. There the unknown woman wakes up seeing Sarah. The other White addresses the woman as Sarah, but does not see Sarah in the nightgown. The normal White comes to Sarah and looks for an explanation. He finds a video statement of the unknown woman, who talks about feeling pursued, and a woman standing next to her bed at night. In another flashback, Sarah herself shoots Jonathon, who now talks with White's voice. In the lab, Sarah says that she is the other woman's nightmare. White's real version treats this woman, she thinks. But White insists that there must be an explanation. Sarah tells him that Jonathon was her big love. But she is not his wife, but the other woman, and she is called Anna. She shot herself. After this statement, she talks to him about love and identity, and he thinks they are in an in-between world. She nevertheless is sure that she created him to find out the truth. Then a woman wakes up in the ward for long-term coma at the Los Angeles University Hospital. She is wearing an oxygen mask and is bound to the bed. A male nurse who looks like the stalker in the story comes to her. He addresses her as Anna and caresses her face. Water drops are falling on the woman's feet. Afterwards, the sleepwalker can be seen on the street again, and she calls herself Sarah Foster.